Staying healthy, staying sexy, staying young is what living life is all about. And if you have doctors that have proven treatments that keep people young and healthy so they don't get sick, you want people to know about these treatments and that they exist.
Welcome to Health Hacks. I am Mark L. White. If you're looking to get in shape for the 20s, I have an amazing show for you. We have our great friend Jay Ferruggia coming up. But first, this episode is brought to you by GainsWave. GainsWave is a treatment done at your doctor's office to optimize erection quality without the needs of Viagra, Cialis. It's non-surgical, there's no needles, and it has an amazing success rate. To find a GainsWave provider, go to gainswave.com. That's GAINSWAVE.com. I'm here with my friend Jay Ferruggia. How are you, Jay?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. You too.
I look at all those photos behind you. I love those photos. I see Bruce Lee, Malcolm X,
Dr. King,
Muhammad,
Ali.
Yeah, Ali. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what inspires you?
All those guys. I grew up, my mom was kind of like a hippie and a rebel in the 60s, March with Dr. King and everything. So that, and then I grew up also listening to hip hop, especially I grew up when NWA and Public Enemy came out, and I was just immersed in that culture. And that's always kind of been something that was, hugely impactful in my life and shaped my worldviews and everything. So I've always been a big fan of all these guys. Bob Marley's up there.
Love Bob Marley. Love all those guys. Love all of that. So where'd you grow up?
Jersey. I spent a lot of time in New York City. And then we've been out here in Santa Monica I spent 36 years in Jersey. We've been here in Santa Monica for 9 years now.
Okay, so you're like me. You're in your 40s. I actually just turned 50 a couple months ago. A couple weeks ago.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. It's kind of one of those scary ages where you realize that more of your life is behind you than ahead of you.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think one of the things you do such a great job of is helping people like me stay fit, stay young, stay healthy. Tell me a little bit about what you do now and how you help people like me stay young.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When you are in your 20s and 30s, you can get away with a lot more, right? You can eat more junk food, you can drink, bounce back, you go out, sleep 6 hours, get up and feel great. As you get older, that compounds, you feel worse and worse. So when I turned 39 was the year I was like, all right, I'm going to be 40, just like you're saying about 50, like that was a big thing for me. So I was starting to not feel that great. And even though I'd been in the fitness industry since I was 19, I was always kind of more of a strength and conditioning guy, powerlifting guy. So I kind of hid behind that. Like, okay, I put on the suit of armor. I'm bigger. I have the tattoos, but I never had visible abs. So I completely, and I started to feel like crap just from beating myself up, and I wasn't recovering as fast. So I made it my goal to finally get healthier, feel better, get lean for the first time. I graduated high school weighing 147 pounds, and I got up to 230. And that's how I was, at 39, going into my 40th birthday, I was probably 215, 220. And so finally, it took a while, but I finally got lean for the first time in my life. And then I just changed the way I train, where I think about longevity now. So if you and I were to go into the gym today, it wouldn't be like we were going in 10, 15 years ago where I'm going to try to beat everything you do. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still competitive, and I still think that's part of it, but I'm always going to train with longevity as the focus. So not necessarily what we can do today, but what can we do 3 months down the road, 3 years down the road, if we keep doing, over time. Whereas when you're younger, you don't think about that. It's just, what can I do today? And just, destroy myself and come back. But you got to think about exercise execution. Your days of the week matter. So you got to do more low intensity stuff as you get older to help you recover.
Make sure you don't get injured either. It seems like
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It seems like every time I do something, I get little tweaks, and sometimes when you hit 50 and you get out of bed, you injure yourself. It's crazy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've gotten injured walking across the street sometimes. You're like, how did that happen?
So let me ask you, like at 19 years old, you were 147 pounds, and you decided to get up to 200 in college. Is that?
So I graduated high school at 147. I was 17, and then eventually I worked my way up over the next 10 years. In my late 20s, I was like I floated around 230, and that was just eating 6,000 calories a day for a decade straight, training my face off, doing a lot of heavy powerlifting. But like I said, that catches up. And back then, I don't think we in general knew, but I certainly didn't know about the importance of gut health and, digestion. And I wasn't taking probiotics or digestive enzymes or worrying about any of that kind of stuff. It was just eat as much as possible to get as big as possible and get as strong as possible. Obviously, that doesn't work at our age.
No, it doesn't. The old strategies no longer work. But what do you think's changed the most in the last? You started in the fitness industry in the early 90s.
Yep.
You've probably back in those days it was going to Bally's and
totally. Yeah.
It's like, but what's changed the most? Like, what have you seen the biggest trends?
It's hard to say because, like you said, it was just going to Bally's, and I started training people. I was just training average adults at that time. I was, 19, 20 when I started, just training regular people, but I really wanted to train athletes. I was an athlete, but I was never a great athlete. And I kind of realized with training that if I could have learned all this stuff years ago, maybe I could have been a better athlete. So my goal was to train athletes. Now, back then, there wasn't strength and conditioning coaches. There wasn't gyms on every corner like there are now. There weren't these underground gyms. There was no such thing as CrossFit. So I created this kind of underground unique thing at the time, which now it's super popular, but no one was really doing that. So, and also there was no such thing as group training. Like you went to Bally's to train with a personal trainer, or a personal trainer came to your house. And I created it not by any stroke of business genius. It was kind of an accident where I had a kid come who was a great football player. I was training him. Then he within 3 months, he was getting great results. So he's referring me all his friends, and this kid's dad had a ton of money. But I realized, okay, most of these kids aren't going to be able to afford what I'm training the adults for. Let me just create like a group package. And that was it. And that was my whole business after that, was just groups of athletes. And then I figured, well, why don't the adults do this too? So I always train people in groups the way you see in CrossFit gyms and whatnot nowadays. I never thought, honestly, though, back then that we would see what we see now, where everybody's all about training all the time. Like you go on Instagram, everybody's training. Everybody's doing squats and deadlifts and these big compound lifts. And so, even though I think there's things that are dangerous about CrossFit, I think they've done a great job at kind of bringing this awareness and getting people to train more. But things always change. It's so funny. If you're really in tune with the industry, you'll see there'll be a trend. Everyone will jump on it. And then a year later, half the people are like, that wasn't the smartest thing. Let's kind of go back to the middle, so the pendulum's always swinging, but then it always comes back to the middle and people kind of figure out what works for them.
So what do you think about things like Orange Theory, where they talk about being in a certain zone on your watches? And I just joined a group fitness 9 rounds where it's all about the zone.
I don't know enough about that. I try to not pay too much attention to trends and things that I don't really believe in. I stay in my lane and focus on my stuff. But here's the thing. With a lot of those group classes, it's all high intensity stuff, and you're going to burn out. Like you just can't go high intensity all the time. So one of my main 5 principles is something that Lee Haney, he was Mr. Olympia, 7-time Mr. Olympia, he said this back in the 80s or 90s. His quote was, stimulate, don't annihilate. So you want to train hard enough to elicit some kind of response in your body, whether that's muscle hypertrophy, changes to your central nervous system, they'll improve your strength and your speed, body fat, conditioning, all these kind of things. But you can't overdo it. And that's what we see. Everybody looks at Rocky training montages and CrossFit and Nike commercials and The Rock doing his thing. And it's like, you just want to go super hard all the time. You can't do that. Even if you're in your 20s, you can't do it. Certainly in your 40s and your 50s, you can't do it. So you could probably go hard 3 to 4 days a week. In between, you have to do easy recovery stuff. So that might mean 30 minutes of any whatever modality you like, bike, hike, swim, row, mix all those up. And that's going to be in the low intensity zone where, an easy formula is 180 minus your age. Keep your heart rate in that zone for 30 minutes. So recovery stuff. And even when you're going hard in your workouts, overall, I tell people, when you look at your yearly workouts, the overall average intensity should be 85%, not 100%. Everyone wants to go 100% all the time. And I do too, get it. I get it. Like that's in my DNA. But you got to dial it back because you got to think about longevity. You got to think about recovery. You got to think about your immune system. You got to think about how it's going to affect all these things. And if you find yourself always run down, always tired, you need 17 cups of coffee a day, you're always getting sick, well, you're probably training too hard. So people need to train hard, but you got to remember there's definitely a fine line.
What do you see as the best training for somebody in their late 40s, 50s to increase energy, just to stay thin, but really have that mental acuity and sharpness?
Yeah, basic heavy strength training is still the best form of exercise. That's going to improve every single thing, everything under that, your endurance, your cardio. Because what happens, what a lot of people don't understand is if I get stronger on basic exercises, then if I go for a run, a swim, I play pickup basketball, it requires less effort. So even if I run a mile, every step requires less effort because I'm stronger. So I'm able to put in more force into the ground. So my endurance, my conditioning, all that improves. And it doesn't take as much out of you. So if you're doing basic heavy strength training, and let's say 6 to 8 rep range, you're not killing yourself, but it's really good form. You're working really hard. And you're resting adequately between sets. So 90 seconds, 2 minutes, some exercise, you might need 3 minutes, not destroying yourself. Then you're going to make strength gains. Now all of a sudden, everything's going to feel good. You're going to fight off that muscle loss as you get older. And one of the best anti-aging strategies is to build more muscle and to keep as much muscle as you can. So you want to do things that are going to build muscle, maintain strength, maintain bone health, keep your joints feeling good. Then everything else kind of falls underneath that. Like I said, the low intensity conditioning is important. Obviously, mobility as you get older, mobility and flexibility is important. But if you do strength training properly, and you're doing, let's say, things like goblet squats and kettlebell swings and Turkish get-ups and Cossack squats, Romanian deadlifts, like all those things will improve your mobility and flexibility. If you do them properly, you shouldn't beat up your joints. So you don't need a ton of that stuff too. A lot of times you'll see guys warming up for an hour and rolling on the foam roller and doing all that stuff. Not necessarily if you're training properly.
Now, you're talking about Cossack squats, stuff that some people may not have heard of, and some people may not be able to afford a trainer. And you see all these apps coming out. I know that you've created an app. Tell me a little bit about the app that you've created and how that can help people.
Yeah, it's basically kind of it covers all the principles that I'm talking about here. So it's basic heavy strength training, but with an eye on longevity. So when people come to me now, they know that my training is going to be more joint friendly than most stuff out there. I prioritize that, and I prioritize longevity. So the way the exercises are sequenced sometimes in a workout, a lot of people don't think about that, but that can make a difference because if let's say you're going to fatigue your upper back muscles, which need to control your shoulders when you're pressing. If they're too fatigued, now I'm pressing, now I'm more likely to get injured. So I talk about sequencing, talk about masterful execution of an exercise. So for example, a lot of people will just yield to gravity, right? Like on the eccentric or negative part of a lift. If you're squatting, you'll just yield to gravity. If you're bench pressing or dumbbell press, what you want to do is control it. So you always do the opposite. So you row the weight down. You pull the weight down when you're squatting. And then that loads your muscles kind of like as a spring, but it also keeps so much tension in there that the joints are protected. Mm-hmm. So things like that are super important. So it's the sequencing, it's the execution, it's the exercise selection that matters. And then we could do too for like let's say you and I were training, we're 45 and 50. Well, I might still want to squat, but I find the bottom of the squat hurts my knees or back a little bit. So what we can do is we get these heavy duty bands. Mm-hmm. We put these over the top of the power rack and on the bar. So that's called a reverse band exercise. So what that'll do, the band's pulling up at the bottom, but there's less tension at the top. So what that does is that deloads. So let's say I go down with 225 on my back, but it becomes probably 185 at the bottom. So now it's less stress on my knees at the bottom where it's more stressful. And as I come back up, now it's 225 again. So things like reverse bands and different things as you get older, super smart to use, things like that too. You could have a similar effect if you put chains on the bar, where it overloads as you go up and then it deloads as you come down.
What can we do to keep our joints lubricated as we age?
Just moving, moving more and more. It's funny, in my 20s, and a lot of people I've worked with in their 20s and 30s, you're fine with 3-4 workouts a week. But I find, and everyone I know in my 40s, you probably agree, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if I take days off, I feel stiff now. Because what happens is your joints don't have the blood supply that your muscles do. It's like, 1/100th of it. So in order to keep them lubricated, you got to keep moving every day. So every day, one simple thing is just take each joint. So your neck, right? Nod up and down, nod side to side, rotate each joint through a full range of motion from head to toe. You can take 5 to 7 minutes to do that. A good rule of thumb is to do as many reps for as years old you are. So you and I would take a little while to get through that one.
It'd be a long time.
Yeah, but even if you just did, let's say 5, right? Throughout the day, you do 5, take your neck through a full range of motion. you move your wrists, you move your elbows. That's a good way. And then just moving each day. If you lift 4 to 5 days a week, or even 3 to 4 days a week, do some low intensity conditioning, go for a swim, just keep moving, do yoga, mix it up. You want to keep moving. As you get older, you tend to get stiffer when you take time off.
Do you do yoga right now?
I do it no. Once in a blue moon. That's one of my things for 2020 is to do it a little bit more regularly. How about you?
I've done it. My wife does a lot of hot yoga, and I did that a few times, and it just kicked my ass.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm like you. I want to do more yoga. I'm trying to meditate more in 2020. That's my goal.
Okay.
That mental acuity.
Yeah, I've been doing that for about 11 years now. That definitely makes a big difference for sure.
Yeah, I just got a new app called Balance. I've had Headspace, and even just taking 10 minutes a day and doing something and just listening to your breathing and trying to quiet your mind, I find is just really, it can be life-changing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it can shift you, shift your nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic, which is great, which a lot of people don't understand. But we walk around all the time, amped up, we're going to meetings, we're working, we're training hard, we're drinking too much coffee. So your central nervous system is just in that fight or flight mode, that sympathetic dominant nervous system mode all day. And that's really not good for long-term health. So anytime you can meditate and especially practice diaphragmatic breathing, even just doing 5 breaths where you try not to let your shoulders and your chest lift up, it's just your diaphragm. And so you can put your hands on the sides of your ribs. You do a deep breath through your nose and you want to expand 360 degrees around. Let your ribs go out, forward, back, but your chest and shoulders never raise. Because when your chest and shoulders raise, that's creating stress all day. And a lot of people have neck pain and they don't realize it's because they're chest breathing all day.
I think also like now, like when we were growing up, we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have all this freaking nonstop distraction. And I think like for me, who's kind of like ADD, having like news at your instance. I mean, my kids don't know what it's like to not know something. Like when you're growing up, you didn't know what the score of a ball game was until the newspaper arrived or until the news was on.
Yeah.
Or, so it's a different thing now. Your mind's always racing. And I know sleep's also important. I mean, how do you teach and coach your clients to sleep?
Well, it starts first thing in the morning, getting outside and getting natural sunlight. If you can do that, that already sets you up for the day, kind of sets your circadian rhythms and whatnot to optimize your sleep. So if you can get outside, if you live somewhere where you're lucky enough to be warm enough, or if it's summer, take your shirt off, get as much exposure as you can for 15, 20 minutes in the morning. But just getting that sun through your eyes is going to help really optimize your sleep. And then the rest of the day, kind of basic stuff, no real tricks, cut off caffeine by 3 p.m. And then everyone I do like, even though you're talking about some of the technology I think is overkill, I think anything that gets tracked and measured will improve. So if you want to use something like the Oura Ring or the Whoop, over time you look at it and you say, okay, this is what's affecting me. This is what's, helping or making my sleep worse. So I think it's good to have one of those trackers, but even just be aware of it, right? Like, okay, well, if I eat white rice, it spikes my blood sugar and then I'm up at 4 a.m. versus if I eat a sweet potato, I sleep through the night. So just kind of, keep track of it and be aware of those things. Maybe eating 2 hours before bed makes you feel better. Maybe 3 makes me feel better. So you got to kind of just track it and be really in tune, like prioritize it. Well, there's so many other things that people prioritize before sleep. No, I got to take a supplement. I got to do this. I got to do that. But no, if you just sleep, everything else will improve. The best way to lose fat, it's the best way to improve your mental acuity, to build muscle, to improve your sex drive, like everything. If you can just sleep more and more efficiently, everything is going to improve. So some of those things, but being aware of it and just making changes. And then, of course, the normal advice, keep the lights down, avoid the screens at night. Definitely avoiding the screens at night is huge.
Keeping your cell phone downstairs when you go to sleep.
Yeah, you cannot keep it in the bedroom for sure.
Yeah, don't sleep with your iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, all the rules that I break. It's always a challenge, but they say that muscles are made in the gym and abs are made in the kitchen. And I'm sure that your clients are always asking you what's the best diet. And there's just too much advice out there. All of it's conflicting. Tell me about what you find with your clients yields the best results.
It's so hard because I always want to be able to give this answer, but then the true answer is everybody's individual. So some people do great on keto. Some people do great on paleo. I don't think anyone does great on vegan diets, but I think the smartest approach is, okay, what do the majority of people do? What could your great-great-grandparents have eaten? So I do like, if I'm taking on someone new, I do like to optimize their gut health first and foremost. So we're going to generally do a paleo AIP, which is pretty strict, paleo autoimmune protocol, which basically you're just eating meat, chicken, fish, no eggs, I'm sorry, vegetables, some berries and some yams, avocado, like that's about it. And honestly, that's how I feel my best. If I take out the yams and the blueberries and I have no carbs, my training suffers, my sleep suffers. And everyone's individual. So I like to start people with that. What could your great-great-grandparents have eaten? What's real food? What is single ingredient food? And then we can kind of play, are you getting enough protein to build and maintain muscle? And studies have shown us over and over again now that as you get older, you actually need a little bit more protein to maintain and build muscle. So are you getting enough protein? Are you getting healthy fats, avoiding, trans fats and plant oils and things like that? So you're getting enough avocado, olive oil, maybe some coconut oil, fish oil, grass-fed beef, things like that. That's super important for joint health, for hormonal health, for cognitive health, cognitive function. And then from there, that's how we decide how many carbs you need. You got your protein, you got your fats covered for hormone health. Now, how much carbs you need depends on your body fat levels, how much you're training throughout the week, what your training is like. So for most people, I average, I'd say 150 grams of carbs a day. But of course, it depends on all those factors, So we'll go up and down based on that. But, a lot of the research over the last few years has shown as you get older, which is important to me and the people that I work with, for longevity, for combating Alzheimer's, for combating inflammation, lower carb and higher fat tends to be better. So it's a rare case that I would have someone, doing 500 grams of carbs a day and only 50 grams of fat. That might be someone who's 28 and super ripped and, just wants to get humongous.
Now, the biggest buzzword I'm seeing right now is intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you see people getting results, or is that just another trend?
I think it's great for a lot of the things I just mentioned. I think it's great for gut health. I think it's great for immune system, but there's a caveat to that. I mean, I'll get to that in a second. I think it's great for losing body fat, for convenience. If you don't want to eat all day, like if you're not a guy or girl who likes to eat 5 to 6 small meals, then it's great. Eat 1 to 3 meals, sure. There's a lot of good things about it. The situation that it's not good for is if someone is super high stress, type A, and they're just driven by cortisol and adrenaline, which are the 2 stress hormones all day, and you're drinking a ton of coffee and you're not sleeping. If you go start doing intermittent fasting, it makes that worse. It exacerbates that. And now you find you're getting all kinds of other things where your eyes are like kind of burning, getting itchy, your hands and feet are sweating all the time because you have that constant adrenaline and cortisol dump. So if you're in that situation, you want to get off of stimulants, get off of booze, get off of sugar, fix your adrenals, turn down your training intensity, probably your training volume, get healthy, and then you could try intermittent fasting.
So hormone health is another thing. You see guys like us in our 40s and 50s, our testosterone levels get depleted, our growth hormone levels get depleted. When do you recommend that people like us should be looking at those levels, and when should they be supplementing?
At 35, you got to start getting a full panel once a year. At 40, twice a year. I have guys that I work with that go 3 times a year. I personally go 3 times a year, sometimes 4 times a year because I'm so into running experiments. So I want to see, okay, I'm going to start January 1st, do this diet, this training plan. I want to see 90 days later how that affected me. Now, 4 times a year is a little excessive. It's my job, so I like to know this stuff so I could share it with people. But yeah, you need to know where your testosterone is at, where your cortisol is at, your thyroid, obviously the basic health markers for your heart, your cholesterol, all that is important. But if it's really low, and it is, unfortunately, because of the way we live these days, the food quality, the soil, the air, constant radiation from your phone in your pocket all day, most men have way lower testosterone levels than they did 50 years ago on average. So you want to get in somewhere, get that tested, and then do all you can naturally to fix it. Change your diet, change your sleep, mitigate your stress. And then if that doesn't work, you want to, look into, there are some decent testosterone boosting supplements you can take. And eventually, if you're still in the gutter, if you're in your 40s and your testosterone level's 200, that's not healthy. Then you want to find a doctor who's going to look into hormone replacement therapy and things like that, because people will say, oh, well, that's not natural. Well, we do a million things a day that are not natural. We don't do anything that our great ancestors and cavemen did. So if you want to optimize your health, if you have low testosterone, not only obviously is your sex drive going to be in the gutter, but your muscle mass, your strength, your ability to recover, your ability to function, you're going to have headaches, you're going to be depressed, you're going to be moody. So you'd want to see a doctor who's good with that kind of stuff and is going to help you really get optimized.
Absolutely. Now you work currently, you work with over 500 clients. Tell me, so obviously you're using technology to get the word out.
Well, I guess technically I'd probably work with thousands, because we have the app and the monthly programming and stuff. I mean, I've worked personally with 500 people over my years, between going to different NFL weight rooms and my gym for 15 years, all the athletes we had come through there. But yeah, now I forgot the question. Sorry.
No, I was just wondering, you want to get you're working with 500 and you have your influence to get the word out to thousands. And you work with people all the way from professional athletes to CEOs, just regular people. Is there a group that you enjoy working with? Is it easier to work with a top athlete who's ripped, or is it easier to work with somebody who's trying to change their whole life?
It's sometimes when you have top athletes, there's a challenge with everybody, right? So you have to kind of tone down their intensity a little bit. For the most part, most top athletes that you work with, they want to go super hard all the time. So you have to kind of rein them in a bit. Some guys need to train a little bit harder. It really depends. I do enjoy nowadays, because it's less. So if you get an athlete, oftentimes now we have to get them ready for testing, for their, for season, for all these different things, which is a little bit more complex and time consuming than honestly I feel like doing after 25 years in this business. So I enjoy with people. I enjoy just working with people, that are our age, anywhere between 35 and 55, where they just want to do all the stuff we're talking about here, optimize their health, train for longevity. Part of it for me is still being strong and jacked. The Rock is probably 47, 48. I would imagine most guys in their 40s want to look like The Rock or yeah. So I like working with people who want to do that, but still are smart enough and appreciate the value of, all right, let's be smart about this. Let's train for longevity, health in mind, all that kind of stuff. So
what's next for you, Jay? What's your big goal for the 20s? I guess we're in the 20s now.
Yeah. Just continuing to grow the podcast. That the feedback I get from doing the podcast has been amazing. We've been doing it for 6 years now. That's awesome. Continuing to grow that, and it's crazy. I meet people wherever I'm at who listen to the podcast, come up to me in gym. So that's really cool. Growing the podcast, helping out more guys, getting more guys in. We have a coaching program, the Renegade Brotherhood, I started about 5 years ago. So we have our monthly training through the app, which is great. And then for guys who want the next level, who want to work with me, we have the Renegade Brotherhood, and we get together 3 times. And that we go a little deeper into kind of personal development and mindset. And it's for men only. And, just creating bonds with guys who don't have that a lot in modern day society. So I love doing that stuff as well.
I love how you built everything around the Renegade brand. You have the podcast, you have the app, the educational tools. That's really cool.
Thank you.
If somebody's listening to this, they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
My website, since my last name is hard to spell and remember, if you go to jay.fit, jay.fit, that'll redirect you there. You can contact us through there. Or I am most active on Instagram, so that's at Jay Ferruggia, and you can shoot me a DM there as well.
It's kind of like a hip hop, J-Fit.
Yeah.
J-Fit. So jay.fit, it'll get people to you.
Yep.
Awesome. I really appreciate the time. I think what you do really helps people like us stay young and healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.